Next generation of athletes, but just Canadians, we are world class at women's sport. Like, we are we like to be humble. We don't always like to say how great we are at all the things and compete globally in every industry, but we are world class at women's sport. And you see it every Olympic Games, summer and winter. You meet the folks that are winning medals, and so many of them women. And again, it's because we support girls and women in sport in a way that's, up there with the best countries in the world. And we have a fan base and a market that follows it and is interested in it. And those two things I think we take for granted, but it's a really great country to live in for women's sport.
Welcome to Momentum, a podcast brought to you by Team Canada. In this season, Watch This, we'll hear about the inspiring stories of some of the brave women of Team Canada as we look towards the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. I'm your host, Arianne Jones, and I competed for Team Canada in the sport of luge at the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics. Having competed on the world stage, I know all about the highs and the lows that come with being an elite athlete, especially heading into an Olympics. I'm so excited to bring you stories from across the spectrum of sport and celebrate the incredible women of Team Canada together. Welcome to the final episode of Watch This. This episode, I'm joined by world-class soccer player and Olympian, my good friend, Diana Matheson. Diana made Olympic history when she scored the game-winning goal in the 92nd minute of play during the bronze medal match at the London 2012 Olympics. 4 years later, she was also part of the team that led Canada to its bronze medal at Rio 2016. After 15 years on the national team and over 200 appearances for Team Canada, Diana announced her retirement in 2021. Since then, she has led the development of the Northern Super League, a professional women's soccer league in Canada that's scheduled to begin play in April 2025. Diana has had such an amazing career as a player and is passionate about building and developing the next generation of soccer talent in Canada. She and I discuss her life after retiring, dive into her history-making moment, and look to the future of women's sport. Diana, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to catch up, but first, I want to dive in to your very impressive and accomplished soccer career with Team Canada. So I'd love to actually rewind a little bit. Was becoming an Olympian always a dream of yours? Or when did you realize it could become a reality for you?
That's a great question. Do I get to ask you it back also? Or have you already addressed this on other? Because if you haven't answered yet, I feel like it'd be interesting to hear your answer too.
No one has asked me a question back yet.
Okay, great. Perfect. We're just, we'll make it more conversational. Because again, we haven't caught up in a while. So that's perfect. It was not a dream growing up. I mean, grew up watching the Olympics for sure. Like Donovan Bailey, huge moment. Pelche and Saleh, huge moment. But didn't dream of it for me personally. I think for two reasons. One, I wasn't really a part of any of the youth national team programs for Canada for soccer. I didn't really make any of the youth national team programs. And B, women's soccer wasn't really visible. We didn't see it in the Olympics. There certainly wasn't any professional games. So I didn't know women's soccer as a job and as an opportunity was out there. And if it was, it wasn't for me because I wasn't really playing at that level yet. And it was really only once I got towards the end of high school, and that's when I first got identified from the national team program. And I started going to my first camp in March of 2003. And there was actually a Women's World Cup that fall. So I kind of just fell into the deep end right away, made the team, didn't let them get rid of me. And then we had a World Cup that fall, and it was actually Olympics the following year. It was 2004, so it was before Athens. So that's really when, once I'd made the national team, it became a dream of mine. And then very disappointingly, we did not qualify for that Olympics. That was, I think, probably one of the biggest upsets in Canadian soccer history. We lost to Mexico, unfortunately, and in Costa Rica, so didn't get to go that one. But then it was the dream was alive and came true the first time when we made Beijing in 2008.
I love that story because I think most people assume that a lot of athletes are like start as a child and they're like, I'm going to go to the Olympics from this. And frankly, that's not actually the story of a lot of Olympians.
And what about you?
Okay, so yeah, you're right. I haven't answered that yet. Mine's kind of similar to yours. I got into the sport definitely not thinking I wanted to go to the Olympics. Same as you, was an active kid, liked to try a lot of different sports. And if I'm being perfectly honest, so like luge has a steep learning curve. And in the first few
I would
years,
imagine, yes. That sounds right to me.
literally and figuratively. And the first few years of my career, like I was not good. Like I sucked at my sport. So there was no look at me, I'm going to go to the Olympics. It was like maybe I can make it down without crashing. And that was the goal at that time. But yeah, it wasn't until very similar to you, actually. When I was in high school, I was starting finally on the junior national team at that point, starting to see myself as, wait a second, I could probably do this. And that's when the 2006 Olympics were in Torino. And I remember they had it on, I went to a sports school, so we had it on the TVs all around the school. And I left my class to go watch luge at the Olympics. And I knew all the athletes at that point on the national team, right? I was close enough to it. So my brain kind of started to do that. Wait a second, I know these people. Maybe that could be me. And then, of course, the next year when I actually made the national team for the first time, I was like, okay, I am here. I'm on the national team. Goal is now the Olympics. So it was definitely a journey for me too.
I just kept playing because I love to play, and I was planning to go to university, and after university, probably just get a quote unquote real job and work in a bank and wear a pantsuit. That was kind of my plan. And then the door was just kept being opened, and the game took me places, and I kept going, and I think earned my way onto the team eventually.
You made it to over 200 appearances for Canada throughout your career. You competed in 3 Olympic Games, and you brought home 2 medals. How does it feel to compete on such a huge global stage and bring home a medal?
Yeah, I was lucky. Truly, I had a long career. I had many injuries towards the end, but I had a long run where I could stay healthy, play a lot of games for Canada, and it was I think that there's a lot of very talented athletes that are always out there. They're good at what they do, and they're willing to put in the work to get to that top level. And then I think a lot of times it takes a bit of luck to kind of, quote unquote, make it or get a medal or not. And for us, it was 2012 for sure. The bronze medal in that games was the first medal for our program ever. It was the first medal for a team summer sport since 1936. And it was very much the watershed moment for Canadian soccer, for a lot of our careers, where it had been the same group of players, more or less, that core that had grown up together, a lot of that 2002 team up for like 10 years. And we'd been pretty much the same team, and no one was watching. No one really cared because, we hadn't really won anything. And then after 2012, that shifted, and we just had this different platform, and that bronze medal. And then obviously the next one, I get to say I've got a couple Olympic medals that for sure opened doors for my career. So it was honestly a dream come true. And that moment in 2012 was so surreal and so filled with joy. And that group had been through so many highs and lows together that it truly was about the journey on that one, to be cliche.
I think it's important for people to know that, right? Like just to hear it was year 9 before you went to the Olympics and won your first medal, right? It's not like athletes' journey. Some athletes' journeys is, go to their first Olympics and win a medal. But for the most part of the majority, that's not the case. And I want to actually dive in a little more granular to that moment, because what I need people to know is that in London 2012, you actually scored the goal in the 92nd minute of play that secured Canada the bronze medal. A huge sporting moment. And at that time, as you mentioned, it was the most consequential moment ever for Canadian women's soccer. Can you bring us into that moment? What do you remember about that moment?
I remember mostly about that moment now because I've seen the highlight so many times. And it was absolutely the case that I was interviewed right after the game, and an interviewer at the side of the field asked me to describe the goal, and I described it, and I described it all wrong. I clearly had no immediate memory of what happened. It was, but I've seen it since, so I do know what happened. But
you were in the flow. You were like, I just has to happen.
Truly. And that's what it felt like. Like in this game, we were exhausted. We'd had the very controversial and emotionally draining semifinal against the US 2 days before. The Olympics for us is a different format than we're used to in tournament soccer. The World Cup, we have 4 days between games to recover. And in the Olympics, we have 2 days between games. So we were 7 games in, physically we're done.
Which
we're
is
not really
crazy because we also need to remember, like we just talked about, you're running for 90 plus minute, right? It's not my sport takes 50 seconds to go down and compete, right? Like your sport at the Olympics is weeks and days of massive soccer games before you get to that medal moment.
Yeah, and 16 days is not enough for us to have a tournament. We actually start before the Olympics even starts, and it's still not enough days. And our roster is smaller. The roster in the Olympics is only 18 compared to 23. So needless to say, we were exhausted, and France had outplayed us most of this game, and we were hanging on by luck and, heart, I guess, and posts. So it had been completely outplayed. So when that goal did go in the back of the net, it was like I have the memory of time slowing down, like you said, being in flow. And I knew that the net was empty. Essentially, Sophie Schmidt had taken a shot. It had been deflected. So the goalkeeper had already dove one direction. And I just had to put it in. And you can see it on the clips too. Like I go to start celebrating before the ball's even in the back of the net. And it was just this unbelievable feeling of, like I said, surreal joy and relief that we weren't going to have to play another 30 minutes of overtime, because there's no way we would have made it through overtime in 30 minutes. So just unbelievable joy and the chance to stand on the podium with that group of people that had been through so much together and set this crazy goal and dream in place and then did it was just, it was unbelievable. It was truly a dream come true.
I think that's so important for listeners to hear that, because obviously heading into Paris, it gives people such a better perspective of when a lot of people will realistically tune into some of those team sports in the semifinals and the finals, right? And for people watching the games this summer, like, know that these athletes have been playing so hard for weeks now and are exhausted and are still having to show up at their best in that moment. I think that's really important for people heading into Paris to understand.
Yeah, for sure.
So people often remember and want to talk about the big moments and accomplishments, which we did, and they are very important. But if we take away some of those big shiny moments, what are some of your most meaningful moments in sport?
Great question. Most meaningful moments in sport. I mean, honestly, because we were talking about 2012 and then the moments before, I'll maybe give two. Because my favorite game in that tournament was actually our third group game against Sweden. And we needed at least a tie to go through to the medal rounds. And Sweden went up 2-0 in the first 20 minutes of that game. And we needed a tie in this game. And we were actually playing in Newcastle. Soccer's never centralized in the host city because we need stadiums and we tend to be other places. So we were up in Newcastle. And our coach at the time was John Herdman, who is from Newcastle, grew up being a fan in those stands. And he was like beside himself getting to coach at this stadium. And we came back in that game and I think Melissa Tancredi scored 2 goals and we ended up tying it. And like that is one of my favorite games of all time. So that was kind of behind the scenes.
Almost feels like being in Newcastle and you guys had such a close, that team had such a close relationship with that coach, with John as well. And him being from there, like almost feels like there was a little bit of that like magic energy behind you guys there.
Yeah, and we did some fun stuff too. Like their biggest rival is Sunderland, and they wear red. And obviously Canada is decked out in red, where we're like, we can't do that. Like we need to switch it up. So there was 2012, there was like a black and white. It was either a T-shirt or a polo, I can't remember, that we got from the Bay at the time that we were wearing. And we decided to wear that one for warm-up. So we wore a black and white Newcastle color T-shirt for warm-up instead of our Canada ones, just to like make sure we had good vibes.
Yeah, good vibes heading into it. I love it. Like, honestly, I love talking about athlete, not so much superstitions, because that's not really a superstition. It's not like we have to wear the black shirt, but the kind of rituals and like intentional choices that you decide to make that matter, honestly, and make you feel an intentional way. Mm-hmm. What was your second moment? You said you had 2.
Oh, yeah. Like literally the lifelong friendships. I think many sports, we get to meet some of our best friends through sport. So for sure, that's a huge piece. Like my best friends are ones I met on the national team. And then I think just the mark that our generation was able to leave on the game, both through that, because of the women that came before us in the game, and and some of the off-field stuff. Like we helped build up the Players Association. And I think that sort of stuff means a lot as well.
Yeah, so impactful to the legacy of the sport, which we're going to get into a lot more. So you announced your retirement in July of 2021. And after being a professional athlete for so many years, and you even mentioned you had a very long career as a professional athlete, how did you feel going into retirement? And how do you feel about it now that it's been a few years?
Yeah, good question. Because it's weird, hey, retiring
It's
when you're in
weird.
your 20s and 30s. So I'd still going through it. At the time, it wasn't a surprise. Like I knew it was coming. I guess I was 37, 38. I'd had a number of injuries the few years before. And then kind of in the winter, because it was COVID at the time, in winter, my body just started breaking down again. And I'd had a few all on kind of the left side, my knees, my feet. And it was my foot at the end of the day that just broke down too much structurally, where it didn't really matter how much rehabbing or whatever I was doing. Like it was not a normal enough foot anymore to put the 10 to 12 kilometers on it per game. So I knew
that paints quite the picture for us, by the way. It just wasn't a normal enough foot.
It's not. Yeah, it was, and I had some tendons not quite right anymore. My sesamoid bone down there is not quite the right shape. So yeah, things break down quickly if I do too much on it. So I knew it was coming, and I had with COVID, it was a weird runway too. But I was probably done longer before I announced I was done, which gave me some time to kind of look ahead and see what I wanted to do next. And it worked out really well that there was a few things on the horizon. Like I knew I wanted to stay involved after playing in some way in soccer and helping build the pro game in Canada. So I was really lucky that one of the Smith School MBA programs was coming up that summer, which COC Game Plan have obviously a program for and sponsorship for. So I was able to get a really incredible scholarship that started, essentially the summer I'd retired. And I also did another program through UEFA, the European Soccer governing body. They have really cool educational programs as well. One for former players. So I started that one as well, which I think started that fall. So I lucked out in terms of the timing, where I kind of had something to dive into pretty quickly to focus myself, use up a bit of time without being a full-time thing, and distract me, I guess, essentially.
I mean, lucked out, but that's also so classic, like how so many Olympic athletes were like, okay, what's the next thing I'm putting my attention into? Where am I going? What am I doing? Let's make a plan. I loved hearing about Diana's path to the Olympics. While Diana may be best known for her goal at London 2012, she made her first appearance for Canada on the global stage all the way back in 2003. For so many athletes, the journey to the Olympics is long and not always straightforward. We hear a lot about these amazing career moments, but we sometimes overlook what it's taken to get there. Heading into her retirement, Diana knew she wanted to help develop women's soccer in Canada. And she made it happen, going back to school to further her knowledge and working to create the Northern Super League. I wanted to ask her about what Canada needs to do to maintain momentum as global leaders in women's sport. While you've retired from sport, you are still very much entrenched in the sporting world and are playing a very significant role in establishing a stronger sports system for women and girls in Canada. Can you tell us about NSL, which is the Northern Super League, and what your vision is for the next generation of Canadian women's athletes?
Yeah, Northern Super League. We kick off next April for our
Great
first season.
Name.
Hey, thanks. Northern Super League, Super League du Nord. We like it. We went a little more like global soccer than we did North American sport. We went gender neutral. We tried to say Canadian without saying Canada and say soccer without saying soccer, because sometimes it's football. It can get confusing. Yeah, we've got 6 founding clubs that kick off next year: Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Halifax.
And to clarify, I want everybody to know that the Northern Super League is the professional Canadian women's soccer league in Canada.
Yeah, correct. Because where we've been in soccer is, we've had this globally successful women's national team for over a decade, arguably since 2002, even before that. And we've excelled at the national team level, back-to-back Olympic medals, gold in Tokyo. But we haven't started to invest yet we hadn't started to invest in our professional game. Well, the rest of the world had. And women's soccer's really come up through national teams and investment there because of the FIFA World Cup, and that's where all the investment and attention has been. But the last 5-10 years, that's shifted. And because the reality is we spend 95% of our time with professional clubs in professional leagues, like same as men's soccer. And
which I think most people don't realize, right? Like, yeah, you're playing internationally in a professional league, and then you have to come and try out for Team Canada, and then you make the team, and then you're like, okay, great, now we're Team Canada, and we train together, and now we're going to the Olympics.
Yeah, so like soccer, obviously global sport. There's leagues everywhere. There's 20 different leagues easy that Canadians might be playing in. And we're with our environments 95% of the time. And then we have something called FIFA dates throughout the year where FIFA says that during these, kind of 1 week per month, there's no professional games. And that's when national teams can come together and spend a week or 10 days to train. So we're most of the time with our pro teams and then periodically with the national team. And then what's happened over the last 5-10 years is that 100% of the national team obviously is not based in Canada. We're all playing abroad. We're playing in the US. We're playing in Europe. I played in Norway for 5 years and I played in the US the rest of my career. There's 150 Canadian women right now on some sort of pro contract abroad. And it was only a matter of time till the rest of the world caught up because you get developed through these pro leagues. And we're just losing so many players that can't get an international contract or choose to give up on soccer because they don't see a job opportunity or visibility for them in Canada, or they don't live in the 3 population centers that have a pathway to the national team. And we needed this pro league to change that because we have the 3rd largest player pool in the world when it comes to girls and women playing soccer. And we have one of the best fan bases in the world for folks that support women's sport and women's soccer. So we've got the recipe for the success here, and we just needed to get started so we can keep winning Olympic medals and start to win some World Cups. Come up with a cool chant. Canadians need cooler chants, so come up with one.
I agree. Yeah, I've been to soccer games before when we were competing in Europe, right? And we would go to European soccer games, and oh my gosh, the chants are so fun. By the end of it, I would know like all of these German local chants, and you're part of it. There's like an energy to it.
Yeah, and that's part of the magic of football is the supporter groups, and there's so much of the atmosphere. So yeah, we're hoping to see that come alive a bit more in our Women's Pro League too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not the person to come up with that chant, but I will participate in the chant. So that's what I can commit to. What have been the biggest challenges so far in building the NSL?
I mean, probably 2 things. One, just the size and scope of the thing. Building a league is big, and every kind of pillar you go into balloons out into its own project. It's big, and there's a lot to do. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges, but we've been lucky in that we've been able to attract some really great folks from business and sport, specifically women in business and sport in this country that we've been able to bring into the project, which has been fantastic. The other thing, which is getting better and better every day, but is certainly out there, is the reality that women's sport has come from a place where it has been inhibited. Its growth has been inhibited by the cultural myths and biases that have surrounded women's sport. No one watches women's sport. Women's sport doesn't make money. So then the folks that, had the money in sport, which were mostly men historically, obviously, chose not to invest in it or market it. And then they complained when no one watched it. So we're coming out of that now, especially the last 2 years. And that's just because there's more data out there. There's more data around games and the return on investment and what our fan base is and how the economics are the same as men's pro sport, where if you invest in it, it grows and becomes profitable. And we're finding that our fan base is unique too. And they're more engaged online and with sponsors and with us even more so than men's sport. So data is helping to dispel those things, but it's the reality that we're still coming from that place. And like women's sport and women's soccer was often illegal in the past. You know what I mean? So we building from scratch.
Right, which is a crazy thought. Now, and I want to get into that a bit because women's sport, I think, is finally just starting to have the moment that it deserves, right? Even just in the last 6 months, we've seen some shifts starting to happen. And as you mentioned, women's sport was often seen as second rate, right? With the argument that you made and the cultural argument that less people are going to watch, less people are going to be interested in women's sport. However, even just in the last 6 months alone, we've seen the AA women's basketball final have more viewers than the men's. We've seen the PWHL, the new Professional Women's Hockey League, sell out the largest hockey arena in North America, and so many other moments.
In 20 minutes, I think.
In 20 minutes. Yeah, exactly. It's not like they sold out over a year. Like, it happened immediately. How does hearing that make you feel?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's the last 18 months, it's grown even faster than I think those of us in it thought it would. But yeah, it's hit a moment coming out of COVID. And I think it's because there has been enough investment over the last kind of half a dozen years that the foundation was there. And Canadian women's sport has done some fantastic research in this space. And they like to say it's not about moments anymore. It's about a movement. But to have a movement, you need professional infrastructures, because if it is only, the one-off events, or if you only see women play soccer at the Olympics, then that's really hard to sustain momentum and build a business around. You need professional environments for players to train in every day, for fans to see them play every week, for it to sustain. And we have that now. And you're seeing it. There's a market.
Yeah, I know one of the interviews that I was so happy to see was Alex Ohanian, Serena Williams' husband, who obviously has a lot of capital to invest, came on saying exactly that. He said, women's sport is a smart business investment, right? And I plan to capitalize and to invest in them, right? So again, just overcoming that cultural norm that no one's going to watch. Well, we've seen that be not true. And hey, it's not a great investment. Well, we're seeing that be not true as well. So it's definitely part of the movement right now. But from your perspective, where do we still have room to grow? There's a lot. But from your perspective, where do we still have room to grow?
Oh, gosh. Everywhere, but we're on track. Women's pro sport is only going to keep growing the next 2 decades, and it's going to grow faster than men's sport in that time period, just because there's a bigger gap to make up. So I think it's only going to get bigger, and I think the interesting part too is because it's so new and a lot of it is being built from scratch, there's the opportunity to innovate. So I think you're going to see, as these leagues, everyone getting started, goal one is just to get started and exist. And then you get to build from there. And I think you're going to see, as these leagues mature, people are going to innovate more and try new things. And you're going to see the ways in which women's sport looks and feels different.
So speaking about this next generation and the future of women's sport, what would you want the current and next generation of female athletes to know?
Oh, I think in Canada, I would like them to know, already all the next generation come in and they see the bars here and they say, we're going to do this. And I think that's what happens over time. And that's exactly what we need. As soon as we get this league up and going 2-3 years in, it's not going to be good enough. And it's going to be up to the next generation to take it to the next level. But I think next generation of athletes, but just Canadians, we are world-class at women's sport. Like, we are we like to be humble. We don't always like to say how great we are at all the things and compete globally in every industry, but we are world-class at women's sport. And you see it every Olympic Games, summer and winter. You meet the folks that are winning medals, and so many of them women. And again, it's because we support girls and women in sport in a way that's up there with the best countries in the world. And we have a fan base and a market that follows it and is interested in it. And those two things I think we take for granted, but it's a really great country to live in for women's sport. And we're globally very good at it. And our women win a ton of stuff. And I think on the pro sports side, same principles. Women's hockey is the best women's pro hockey league in the world and will be. In basketball, just wait till WNBA Toronto gets here. They're going to compete. I promise you that. In the women's soccer side, we're different than hockey. We're a global market, but we can be a top 5 women's soccer league in the world's most popular sport. So we've got big ambitions in Canada, but it's because we're good at it, Canada.
Yes, I love that. All of us are humble Canadians most of the time. And it's like, no, I'm confidently here to say we are going to crush, and I need people to know that.
Yeah, we're humble, but we still going to try and win.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, heading into the Paris Olympics, you'll be a spectator watching Team Canada compete. What are you most looking forward to watching?
Great question. And I will say, in all honesty, it's not a particular sport. It is my beautiful wife hosting on CBC, and she's hosting her show. She hosts the morning show, and she hosted live from Canada House. So I'm going to watch the beginning from here, but I'm going to be over there for kind of the second half of the games, and I get to watch her at work and see that. So I can't wait.
Me too. Everybody watch the morning show with CBC with Anastasia because she's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
For any listeners who may not be familiar with women's soccer, what should they be looking out for in Paris? Or are there any key players that our listeners should be watching out for?
Yeah, for sure. I think the key storyline here is we won a bronze in 2012, bronze in 2016, gold in Tokyo. So clearly we're trying to repeat and get the gold in this games as well. Historically, we have a really good track record in women's soccer of winning an Olympic medal after a disappointing World Cup. And we had a disappointing World Cup last summer.
Okay.
So that bodes well for our results. And now, we're in the post-Christine Sinclair era. We're in that. But the good news is that we have such a talented core group of players now. Your Kenesha Buchanan's, Jessie Fleming, Ashley Lawrence, this group of players that has already been on the national team probably 10 years themselves. They've been in World Cups. They've been in Olympics. They have the experience, and they're so talented. And that goes with the rest of the roster now. I think player for player, we've got more players now on top clubs around the world than we've ever had. So it'll be an exciting team to watch, and hopefully we get ourselves back on a fourth podium in a row.
Well, I'm excited. I can't wait for them to begin. I even the other day was busting out all of my Team Canada gear to wear, except then, obviously for listeners that might not know, I went to the Winter Olympics. So all of my Team Canada gear is like fleece jackets and snow pants. And so that might not work too well for me watching the Summer Olympics, but I will be sporting all of it. Last question that I want to end with that we've ended every episode with so far. In the lead up to Paris 2024, Team Canada has launched the Brave is Unbeatable campaign, aiming to celebrate the inner bravery that all athletes and Canadians call upon when facing individual obstacles in their daily lives. Now, I think that your journey from helping your team bring home medals for Team Canada to creating a legacy to now fighting to change the culture of women's sport and create more opportunity is such bravery to me. And I want you to know that you are bravely paving the road for entire generations of female athletes. But what does being brave mean to you personally?
First of all, thanks, Jonesy. To me, trusting yourself and going for it, whether you feel 100% ready or not, especially as women. We know there's stats out there, men apply for a job when they have like 2 traits out of 10. Women wait until they have 8 or 9. Trust that you're good at what you do. Trust that you can surround yourself with people that can help you support the things you're not as good at, and go for it. Like truly, I think it was Marty McBean that probably said it to us back in 2008 in our first Olympics. That probably gets said a lot in Olympic circles, but if not you, then who? If not now, then when? And if you're in the position where you can go for what you want to go for, trust you're the right person to do it.
I love that. Ready is a myth. No one is ever 100% ready. You just have to step up and do it. But I love those as parting words. For anybody that has a goal and has a dream and has something that they've been thinking about, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? What a fantastic way to cap off the first season of Momentum. Diana is a trailblazer, and I appreciated hearing not just about her own journey, but also about the landscape of professional women's sport in Canada. I completely agree with Diana. As Canadians, we tend to be humble, but we truly are world class, and we have the opportunity to be world leading. As the Games in Paris come to an end, we've once again witnessed the power of sport to bring us together, and seen women athletes leading the way. If you haven't already, I highly recommend going back and listening to all the other episodes. I've had some inspiring and impactful conversations with Team Canada athletes. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this season of Watch This. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review. It's the biggest way you can support the podcast. To follow these athletes' stories and results as they compete in Paris and beyond, download the Team Canada Olympic app, visit olympic.ca, or follow Team Canada on social. To watch clips from all episodes of Momentum, subscribe to Team Canada's YouTube channel. Thanks for playing a role in building positive momentum around women's sport.